This video is about one of the most complicated problems in moral philosophy, a problem that you and I deal with almost every single day without us ever knowing that it is a problem. The problem that if someone does something horrible to us or someone else, does it mean they're truly evil? Or is it because they were unlucky and found themselves in circumstances where they couldn't do anything but evil? This question touches nearly everything we care about: morality, law, politics, religion, intimate relationships, feelings of guilt, and everything our lives revolves around. So sit back and relax, because in this video, we'll try to find the answer by engaging with a neuroscientist that I interviewed specifically for this video, who has conducted various studies on topics that relate to this problem. And not only that, we'll delve into neuroscience, philosophy, and even touch upon the insights of physics to understand the problem, and we'll try to find a solution to this problem, if there is one. So let's begin. In 1979, Thomas Nagel, in his book Mortal Questions, pointed out a paradox that he called moral luck. So the paradox goes like this. In society, we are considered good or bad given if we are in control of our actions. But if we look closely, we realize that we are not in control of our actions, but yet still we're held morally responsible. But how can we not be in control of our actions? This would mean that we don't have free will. And this is why, for us to really understand if we're good or evil because of luck, we need to understand if we do have free will or not. Since free will is the root of the problem of moral luck, or the problem of if luck makes us good or evil. Before we go further, I want to mention this. I will try to investigate if we have free will or not, the kind of free will that normal people like you and I think we have. And it is important because
it is more of a social thing than, let's say, if you study black holes, you're not going to go in the street and ask people, what do you think when what do you mean by a black hole?
This is Uri, a neuroscientist and a leading expert. Uri has conducted many studies and published various research papers on the topic of free will. Have you did some research or learned about how normal people define free will?
Like a lot of these things, it gets complicated. So if you ask people, they do tend to associate free will with things relating to like control, having control over your actions. And I think to some extent also with this idea of having the ability to do otherwise.
And people feel this way because we feel as if we have the ability to control and generate our wants and actions whenever we consciously do something. So for example, if we're going to the gym, then we would feel like as if it is us who first generated the want to go to the gym, due to which we're going to the gym or doing the action of going to the gym. And this makes us feel like as if we are in control of ourselves. And because of this ability, we believe we could have done otherwise in the past by simply choosing a different want and doing a different action. And because of these two things, we feel like as if we have free will. And this is why we hold bad people responsible, because we believe bad people could have done otherwise by choosing to have a different want and subsequently doing a different action. So the main point here is that the thing that makes us good or evil is our choice. But what if our choice could be predicted even before we're aware of what choice we'd make?
I mean, I should say actually, Kornhuber and Dike in the mid-1960s discovered something called the readiness potential,
or RP, which basically is a build-up of electrical signal inside our brains, preparing us to do a certain action. For example, if right now I ask you to wave your hand at me on the count of 3, so 1, 2, 3, if you wave your hand, which you hopefully did, as soon as you understood the instructions, your brain started preparing you to wave your hand. And this is readiness potential. And then came Libet experiments.
So Libet was wondering if we asked people when they decided, how would that fit there with the readiness potential versus when they actually move? So he did that. He connected people to EEG, you put this cap on your head, record brain activity, and he told people whenever they felt like it to kind of flex their wrist. He also put this kind of a rotating dot on this type of screen in front of them, and he asked them where was the dot when they first had the urge to move. From the placement of the dot, you can calculate the timing, and basically he calculated that on average people said that they had the urge to move about 200 milliseconds before they actually moved. So that was interesting because if you look at this readiness potential, you can see something in the brain supposedly leading up to movement about half a second before people move, yet people report having decided to move or having an urge to move about 200 milliseconds before. So you have this interesting situation where people decide to move here, yet before that time, you can see it in their brain. So what's happening in between here, right? You've got a situation where supposedly a neuroscientist could tell you that you're about to move. They see this readiness potential, yet the person is not aware of it yet. So does that mean that that movement was done unconsciously? Perhaps. And some people, to some extent including Libet, thought that this is an indication of general movements, or general decisions. So maybe all decisions are made unconsciously. So it could be that when you decided to make this video, you sat there, thought about it, said, oh, I think this would be interesting, and so on, and then at some point made a decision. But actually, maybe what really happened, if we looked into your brain, is we would see that decision before you feel that you decided, and then the conscious you, the conscious Wakar, just gets informed about it and says, oh, yeah, of course, it was me, I decided. So that's kind of the upshot that has people puzzled following the Libet experiment.
But just like everything in life, Libet experiments aren't perfect.
One issue with the Libet experiment is, there are a few issues, but Libet went back to the lab with all the data, analyzed it for weeks or months, and then came back with a conclusion. The question, of course, is what happens in real time? So can you really in real time say, aha, you're about to move now? Another aspect is you're just sitting there going like this from time to time. There's no meaning and no purpose to it. So another question is, what happens if you try to make more purposeful decisions that actually mean something?
In response to these criticisms, Uri also conducted his own experiments.
So that's where the experiment that you're referring to happened.
How are they different from Libet experiments?
So what we did was we played called matching pennies against a participant. And matching pennies is a version of like rock, paper, scissors, but there are only two choices. So let's say if we went 1, 2, 3 and we both raised our hands and we agreed if we both raise our right hand or both raise our left hand, maybe you win. And if we raise opposite hands, then I win. That would be matching pennies. And let's say, we could play for quarter per round or whatever. Of course, if they lost, they didn't have to pay us, but if they won, we paid them. So it's like there was some kind of incentive to win. I should say these participants were not regular participants. They were actually epilepsy patients who were implanted with electrodes in their brain. It was for clinical purposes, not for our purposes. And we just went and we said, well, would you be willing to maybe participate in an experiment? So what we did is we created this real-time system that analyzed the signal from their brain and try to predict which hand they would raise. So they were looking at me and I was looking at them, and I had these earphones on. So there's this countdown, 3, 2, 1, go, and then we have to raise our hand. And the real-time system let me know just before the go signal which hand I need to raise to beat the participant. Even though they maybe felt that they were playing with me, they were actually kind of playing against their own brain activity. And we were able to predict between 70 and 80% accuracy. In real time, it was closer to 70 because there's a lot of things. But if we did some offline analysis, it was 80 or even higher percentage that we were able to predict. And actually, I cut it out for privacy reasons, but at some point the participant actually says, wait a minute, what's going on? You keep on winning.
So what do these experiments tell us? Even though Libet, Maoz, they don't claim that their experiments prove that there is no free will, but their experiments could be interpreted in this way. First, we do not control our wants and actions because their initiation begins unconsciously. And secondly, we do not have free will in the same sense as the general public think it does. But does it mean we don't have free will? Hold your horses if you think we don't have free will, because there has been a lot of criticism on these experiments from philosophers who call themselves compatibilists. They don't accept in any way that these experiments prove that we don't have free will. In philosophy, most of the philosophers believe that we have free will, and most of them, like Dan Dennett, Harry Frankfurt, Simon Blackburn, and Susan Wolf, belong to the compatibilist camp. So there are three camps in philosophy that deal with the problem of free will. So compatibilism, we're discussing right now. Determinism says there is no free will, but we'll be discussing it in a bit. And libertarianism, it says we do have free will, and interestingly enough, it tries to connect quantum mechanics with free will. We'll definitely discuss it further along the video, but let's get back to compatibilism. So compatibilists believe that we have free will as long as we have the capacity to reason.
You start to get agency when you get control of the right kind. And control of the right kind includes, for human beings, control by cognitions, awarenesses, and being subject to reasons.
So for example, you're going to your friend's birthday party and you have dressed your best. But it turns out it's raining outside. But as you're about to leave your home, you also see there's an umbrella hanging right next to the door. Would you take the umbrella? I think you'd say yes, because any reasonable person understands not taking the umbrella isn't a good idea. And this is the kind of reason that compatibilists say we need to have free will. On the contrary, an unreasonable person would be someone who lacks the ability to reach reasonable conclusions, like children, people who are mentally disabled, people who have suffered some kind of brain trauma, or maybe they have some kind of brain injury, a person who's sleepwalking. These are the people who don't have the kind of reasoning ability which would allow them to have free will. And according to compatibilists, these people and people like these don't have free will. And this is why compatibilists criticize neuroscience experiments, because in the experiments, the actions and choices are not based on any reason that truly matter to the test subjects, but instead are simplistic, spontaneous, and lack any reason-based decision-making that is important in real life for us to have free will. This is why compatibilists claim that we do have free will, even though the neuroscience experiments say otherwise. But then the question arises, why should the compatibilist definition of free will be preferred?
Having the capacity to be responsive to reasons is, of course, not enough on its own.
Just like Uri, a neuroscientist, there are other philosophers who disagree with the compatibilist definition of free will, like John Searle.
Okay, I'll be brief about compatibilism. It seems to me a cop-out.
Sam Harris.
From my point of view, compatibilism is essentially the dictum, a puppet is free as long as it loves its strings.
Galen Strawson. Strawson says, I like philosophers, but they've made a truly unbelievable hash of all of this. They've tried to make the phrase free will mean all sorts of different things. So as we've discussed, most people define free will as if they have the ability to control and generate their wants and actions. This kind of free will is impossible, according to Galen Strawson.
I would say there's a fundamental sense in which free will is impossible.
Because
when we act, we do what we do because of the way we are. So, to be truly responsible for what we do when we act, we need to be truly responsible for how we are.
basically what he says is that everyone is the way they are because of two things: genetics and culture. And we don't choose these things prior to our birth. So whatever makes us us, like our thoughts, abilities, personalities, traits, habits, even our ability to reason, they all are given to us without our consent, which leaves no room for free will. The reason is, if we try to understand the universe at the most basic level, we learn that everything follows a cause and effect principle, which means everything has a prior cause. Just like for the Earth to exist, the solar system had to form first. And for the solar system to form, a big cloud of gas and dust had to come together, which was made inside all stars. And for the stars to be there, the universe had to start with the Big Bang. And just like Earth can't cause itself to exist without what came before it, in the same way, it is impossible for us to have wants of our choosing. Instead, our wants are results of events that precede us because they emerge from the background causes that we are unaware of and have no control whatsoever. This, what I just explained, is determinism. And this takes us back to the start of the video where we asked this question: does luck make us good or evil? As we've learned, we don't control our actions, or in simple, we don't have free will. But actions and free will are only one part of the equations when it comes to what makes us good or evil. The rest depends on moral luck. For example, many of the Nazi concentration camps officers would never have committed those horrible acts if Nazi party never came into power, or if those officers were born in a different part of the world. This is called circumstantial luck, and it makes us understand that what we do largely depends on what kind of situation or circumstances we find ourselves in. So there is another type of luck. Let's use an example to understand it. Consider this: you and your friend have a fight over a girl, but turns out the girl herself tells you that she doesn't like you but likes your friend instead. You realize you made a mistake. To cool things off, you call your friend and tell him, dude, I think I made a mistake, let's patch things up and let's hang out. He agrees, he shows up to your place, but the first thing he tells you, he says, dude, I'm having a headache. You say to him, no problem. Being a good friend, you go back inside your house and you grab a painkiller, you give it to him. He takes the medicine, but he suddenly dies. After some time, you realize that you gave him the wrong medicine by mistake. So in this scenario, even if your intentions were pure, you're still going to be considered an evil person because of the results of the actions rather than the intentions of your actions. And this is called resultant luck. So Thomas Nagel mentioned two more lucks, which we already kind of have covered. Causal luck. It basically says that everything happens due to cause and effect principle. And constitutive luck, which says we don't choose what kind of a person we'll become. We could be depressed, happy, positive, negative, cheerful, a person who works really hard, a workaholic, or someone who just only cares about his family. All of these things are influenced by our genetics and our culture, both of which we don't choose. So since we don't control our actions, nor the kind of circumstances we find ourselves in, nor what kind of person we become, then we can safely say that it is luck that decides if we would become a good person or an evil person. But am I 100% sure that this is the ultimate truth, even though I consider myself a determinist? No.
It's not clear that our world is really deterministic.
So let's discuss libertarianism. So let's imagine if we were to be living in a universe where we had free will, what kind of a universe that would be?
If that were the case, then there will be events in the universe, namely free decisions, which sometimes do not have antecedently sufficient causes.
Or, in simple terms, our decisions, wants, and actions wouldn't always be based on cause and effect principle. And interestingly enough, there is such a thing in our universe that isn't deterministic. It's our universe at the quantum level or at the very small scale. And if we do have free will, then it must come from quantum mechanics, at least according to John Searle.
If free will is a reality, then there must be some connection between free will and quantum mechanics.
Roger Penrose, a Nobel Prize winner physicist, suggests the reason why we're conscious is maybe because of quantum mechanics. But again, it isn't as simple. The reason why quantum mechanics is not deterministic is because there are random events happening at the quantum level, which are almost impossible to predict. This is why quantum mechanics is not deterministic. But if quantum events are tinkering with our neurons inside our brains to make us do stuff in a way so that we can have free will, we still can't have free will because, as we've learned, quantum events are random. But if those quantum events are making us have free will, then we'd be doing random stuff. But this is not how we behave. For us to be us and act like us, we need to be consistent and do actions that are based on our personality, history, and how we have been living our lives. And libertarianism doesn't provide any solution to this problem. So we can say that, yeah, there's a way for us to have free will, but the way hasn't been opened yet. Hey, if you like this video, like the video, and please consider subscribing. Before saying goodbye, Peter Singer thinks that you are an immoral person. Check out here why he thinks that you are an immoral person. And it was really nice seeing you though.